The classroom fell silent as the teacher's footsteps echoed ominously. Barron Trump sat in the back, his heart racing despite his outward calm. The air felt thick with tension, like a storm brewing. Barron Trump, stand up! The teacher's voice cracked like thunder. All eyes turned to the former president's son as he slowly rose, his face a mask of composure. Beneath the surface, emotions churned. What happened next left everyone speechless. Barron's response wasn't just unexpected, it was a moment that would change their lives forever. As tears began to fall, the truth behind this extraordinary encounter started to unfold. The bell rang, signaling the start of another school day at Washington Preparatory Academy. Students shuffled into the classroom, their chatter filling the air with nervous energy. Among them was Barron Trump, his tall frame slightly hunched, as if trying to disappear into the background. As he made his way to his seat, whispers and sidelong glances followed him like shadows. Miss Hawkins, the American history teacher, strode into the room with purpose, her heels clicking against the polished floor. Her voice carried across the room as she began the lesson, discussing the complexities of the Civil War. Barron's gaze fixed on the window, watching clouds drift lazily across the sky, a stark contrast to the tension building within the room. A question about the Battle of Gettysburg hung in the air, met with uncomfortable silence. Ms. Hawkins's eyes swept the room, landing on Barron, who seemed lost in thought. "Mr. Trump," she called out sharply, "perhaps you'd like to enlighten us about the significance of Pickett's charge." All eyes turned to Barron. His classmates shifted, curiosity and judgment etched on their faces. For a moment it seemed Barron might retreat further into himself. But then something changed. He straightened, meeting Miss Hawkins' gaze. His response was soft but clear, revealing unexpected depth. Pickett's charge was a defining moment in the Battle of Gettysburg, he began, voice gaining strength. It was an infantry assault, ordered by Confederate General Robert E. Lee against Major General George Meade's Union positions. Barron continued, explaining the strategic errors and devastating losses. The class listened, captivated. His words painted a vivid picture of the battlefield, the soldiers' courage, and the weight of commanders' decisions. Ms. Hawkins' expression softened, surprise and admiration replacing frustration. When Barron finished, a hush fell over the classroom. It was as if they were seeing him anew, not as the son of a controversial figure, but as a peer with his own thoughts, knowledge, and passions. The silence that followed Barron's response was short-lived. Ms. Hawkins's eyes narrowed, her earlier admiration evaporating like mist in the morning sun. She leaned forward, her voice taking on an edge that sent a ripple of unease through the classroom. "That's all very well, Barron," she said, her tone sharp. "But what about the current political landscape? How do you reconcile your family's legacy with the challenges we face today?" The question hung in the air, heavy and loaded. The other students shifted in their seats, a mix of curiosity and discomfort etched on their faces. Some leaned in, eager to hear Barron's response, while others looked away, embarrassed by the teacher's sudden departure from the lesson plan. Barron's hands clenched under his desk, his knuckles turning white with the effort to maintain his composure. He could feel the weight of every gaze in the room, the expectations and judgments pressing down on him like a physical force. Memories flashed through his mind, whispered comments in the hallways, sideways glances in the cafeteria, the constant scrutiny that came with being a Trump in a post-Trump presidency world. Ms. Hawkins pressed on, her questions becoming more pointed with each passing moment. "What about the immigration policies your father championed? The environmental regulations that were rolled back? How do you justify those decisions in light of what we know now?" The tension in the room was palpable. A few students squirmed in their seats, clearly uncomfortable with the direction the conversation had taken. Others watched with rapt attention, their eyes darting between Barron and Ms. Hawkins as if following a heated tennis match. Barron took a deep breath, his chest rising and falling slowly as he gathered his thoughts. When he spoke, his voice was steady, carrying a maturity that belied his years. "Ms. Hawkins," he began, "I understand the weight of my family name and the strong feelings it evokes. But I'm here as a student, just like everyone else. My goal is to learn, to understand different perspectives, and to form my own opinions based on facts and critical thinking. He paused, his gaze sweeping across the classroom before settling back on his teacher. I can't speak for my father's administration or defend every decision that was made. What I can do is commit to learning from history, both its triumphs and its mistakes, and use that knowledge to shape my own path forward. The room fell silent, the weight of Barron's words settling over everyone present. Miss Hawkins blinked, clearly taken aback by the measured response from her young student. Barron continued, his voice gaining strength. I believe it's important to engage in respectful dialogue, to listen to different viewpoints, and to work towards solutions that benefit everyone. That's why I'm here, in this class, learning about our nation's history, because understanding where we've been is crucial to figuring out where we should go. The silence that followed Barron's words was electric, charged with a palpable shift in the atmosphere. Ms. Hawkins's face flushed, her earlier confidence visibly shaken by the unexpected maturity and eloquence of her student's response. The other students exchanged glances, their perceptions of Barron Trump visibly transforming before their eyes. Barron stood tall now, his posture straight and his gaze steady. His voice, once hesitant, now carried a strength that commanded attention. I know what you all think of me, he began, his words cutting through the tension in the room. You see my last name and assume you know everything about who I am and what I believe. The class listened, transfixed, as Barron painted a picture of a life lived under constant scrutiny. He spoke of whispered comments in hallways, of friendships lost before they began, of the weight of expectations that threatened to crush him daily. Every decision I make, every word I say, is analyzed and judged not just by my peers, but by the entire world, he said, his voice tinged with a sadness that made several students shift uncomfortably in their seats. Ms. Hawkins's expression softened, her earlier hostility melting into something that looked remarkably like shame. She had judged this young man before truly knowing him, falling into the very trap she often warned her students against. Barron continued, his words now flowing freely. He spoke of sleepless nights, spent worrying about living up to impossible standards, of the loneliness that came with being constantly misunderstood. I'm not here to defend or explain my father's actions, he said firmly. I'm here to learn, to grow, to figure out who I am, beyond the headlines and the assumptions. As he spoke, tears began to form in the eyes of several students. They saw before them not the son of a controversial figure, but a peer, struggling with the universal challenges of identity and belonging. The raw honesty and vulnerability in Barron's voice struck a chord that resonated deeply with many in the room. All I ask, Barron said, his voice now softer but no less powerful, is for the chance to be seen as an individual, to be judged not by my family name, but by my own actions and words. Isn't that what we're all fighting for in the end? The right to be truly seen and understood. A profound silence settled over the classroom as Barron's words hung in the air. It was a silence heavy with newfound respect and, perhaps more importantly, empathy. In that moment, the divide between Barron Trump and his classmates seemed to shrink, bridged by the universal language of human struggle and resilience. The bell's shrill ring pierced the air, but the students remained rooted to their seats, caught in the spell of the moment. Ms. Hawkins stood at the front of the class, her usual confident demeanor replaced by a look of uncertainty. She opened her mouth to speak, but the words caught in her throat. The atmosphere in the room had shifted so dramatically that she found herself unsure of how to proceed. Barron's shoulders visibly relaxed, as if the weight of his words had lifted a burden he'd carried for years. He took a deep breath, his eyes scanning the faces of his classmates. For the first time, he saw something other than judgment or curiosity in their expressions. There was a hint of understanding, perhaps even empathy. Suddenly, a chair scraped against the floor. Emily, a girl who had always kept to herself, stood up. Her voice trembled as she spoke. I know what it's like to feel judged before people even know you. My dad's in prison, and everyone assumes I'm going to end up just like him. She paused, swallowing hard. But I'm not my father's mistakes. I'm here to learn and make my own path. Her words seemed to break a dam. One by one, other students began to share their own stories. James, the star athlete, revealed the pressure he felt to maintain a perfect image. Sarah, known for her impeccable grades, spoke about her struggles with anxiety and the fear of failure. Each story peeled back layers of assumptions and revealed the complex individuals beneath. As the stories unfolded, Ms. Hawkins found herself listening intently, her earlier prejudices crumbling in the face of these honest exchanges. She realized that she, too, had been guilty of making assumptions based on surface-level information. The classroom had transformed into a space of vulnerability and connection, bridging gaps that had seemed insurmountable just moments before. Amidst the sharing, Barron remained quiet, but his presence seemed different now. He was no longer the isolated figure at the back of the room, but an integral part of this newfound community. The atmosphere had shifted from tension to a shared sense of growth and revelation. One of Barron's classmates, a boy named Michael, who had often made snide remarks about Barron's family, stood up. He looked directly at Barron, his voice thick with emotion. I'm sorry, man. I never thought about how hard it must be for you. I guess we all have our own battles, huh? Barron nodded, a small smile tugging at the corners of his mouth. Thanks, Michael. That means a lot. As the final bell rang, signaling the end of the period, there was a collective pause. No one rushed to pack up their things or dash out the door. Instead, there was a sense of reluctance to break the bond that had formed in that hour. As the bell echoed through Washington Preparatory Academy, whispers and furtive glances replaced the usual student rush. The story of Miss Hawkins' American history class spread like ripples in a pond, each wave carrying new layers of intrigue and speculation. In the cafeteria, seniors debated the incident, their lunches forgotten. Barron Trump totally owned Ms. Hawkins, one boy claimed. No way, another countered. My cousin said Barron broke down crying. The truth lay somewhere in between. But in the crucible of high school gossip, facts bent to personal biases. The teacher's lounge buzzed with tension as Principal Ellington addressed the faculty. We must handle this delicately, she warned, her voice grave. Ms. Hawkins' actions have put us in a precarious position. The implications of singling out a high-profile student weighed heavily on everyone's minds. Outside, reporters gathered, alerted by the social media storm. The Barron Trump and Chalkian Washington Prep incident trended locally, opinions ranging from outrage to admiration. Inside, Barron navigated the hallways with a new awareness. Some students offered shy smiles, while others watched warily, struggling to reconcile the person before them with the circulating story. Debates erupted in classrooms and common areas about the treatment of high-profile students and the role of politics in education. Even typically disengaged students found themselves drawn into passionate arguments. By the final period, the administration realized they could no longer ignore the situation. An announcement crackled over the intercom. There would be a school-wide assembly the following morning to address the day's events and provide a forum for open discussion. The transformation at Washington Preparatory Academy was palpable. Where once tension and suspicion hung heavy in the air, now laughter and animated conversations filled the hallways. Barron Trump walked through the main entrance, his posture relaxed, eyes meeting those of his peers with quiet confidence. The whispers that followed him now carried a tone of respect. As Barron approached his locker, Emily called out, "Hey, Barron, want to join our group project for Ms. Hawkins' class?" He hesitated briefly, then smiled. "I'd love to." In the library, Barron found himself surrounded by eager faces, genuinely interested in his perspective on social media's impact on political discourse. The irony wasn't lost on him, but he felt grateful for this chance at meaningful dialogue. Later, Ms. Hawkins asked Barron to stay after class. Her voice trembled as she apologized for her past assumptions and promised to do better. This moment marked a turning point, not just for Barron, but for the entire school. The administration implemented new programs promoting empathy and understanding. Inspired by Barron's courage, other students began sharing their own stories. James, the star athlete, opened up about the pressure to maintain a perfect image. Sarah revealed her struggles with anxiety and fear of failure. As autumn progressed, the school's atmosphere continued to evolve. Cliques dissolved, replaced by friendships that crossed previously rigid social boundaries. Barron found himself at the center of this change, forming genuine connections with classmates who had once kept their distance. One crisp afternoon, Barron sat alone on a bench overlooking the school grounds. He reflected on his journey, from feeling like an outsider to becoming an integral part of the community. A sense of peace washed over him, as he realized that by being true to himself, he had helped create a more inclusive environment for everyone. As the sun rose over Washington, D.C., the story of Barron Trump and the classroom incident at Washington Preparatory Academy had already begun its journey far beyond the school's brick walls. News outlets, always hungry for a fresh angle on the Trump family, latched onto the tale with fervor. What started as a local whisper quickly crescendoed into a national conversation about education, empathy, and the weight of expectations placed on young shoulders. CNN's morning broadcast led with the headline, "Barron Trump Speaks Out, a Lesson in Empathy." Meanwhile, Fox News framed the story differently. Liberal teacher targets Trump's son, backfires spectacularly. The polarization of media coverage mirrored the divided state of the nation, turning a moment of vulnerability and growth into yet another battleground for political ideologies. As the story gained traction, public figures from all walks of life weighed in. Michelle Obama, known for her advocacy in education, praised Barron's maturity in a tweet. This young man's courage reminds us that empathy and understanding are the cornerstones of progress. Barron Trump. Empathy. On the other side of the aisle, Senator Ted Cruz questioned the narrative, suggesting it might be a staged PR stunt to humanize the Trump family. For Barron, the sudden spotlight brought a new set of challenges. Requests for interviews flooded in from major networks and talk shows. Good Morning America, The Ellen DeGeneres Show, and even late-night hosts like Jimmy Fallon clamored for a chance to hear from the young Trump in his own words. The pressure to navigate this sudden fame while maintaining his privacy and continuing his education weighed heavily on the teenager's mind. Inside the Trump household, reactions were mixed. Melania, ever protective of her son, worked tirelessly to shield Barron from the media frenzy. Donald Trump, known for his bombastic Twitter presence, surprised many with his restrained response, "Proud of my son Barron. He's growing into a fine young man, proud dad." This uncharacteristically subdued tweet sparked speculation about the family's private dynamics and how they were processing this unexpected turn of events. In teachers' lounges and education departments across the country, Barron's experience became a catalyst for introspection. Dr. Emily Rogers, a professor of educational psychology at Ohio State University, incorporated the incident into her curriculum. This case study provides a unique opportunity to examine our own biases and how they impact our interactions with students, she explained to her class of future educators. The ripple effect extended beyond academia. Corporations began incorporating empathy training into their diversity and inclusion programs, citing the Barron Trump incident as a wake-up call for fostering understanding in professional environments. Silicon Valley tech giants like Google and Facebook announced initiatives to combat online bullying and promote digital citizenship, directly referencing the classroom story in their press releases. Barron Trump's response in that classroom sparked a ripple effect that extended far beyond the walls of Washington Preparatory Academy. The courage he displayed in sharing his truth became a catalyst for change, challenging people across the nation to look beyond labels and see the humanity in each other. As the story spread, it touched hearts and minds, prompting conversations in homes, workplaces, and communities. People began to reflect on their own biases and assumptions, recognizing the power of empathy and open dialogue. The incident served as a reminder that behind every public figure, every stereotype, there's a human being with their own struggles and aspirations. In the weeks that followed, the impact of Barron's words continued to grow. Schools across the country implemented programs to foster understanding and compassion among students. Corporations reevaluated their approach to diversity and inclusion, incorporating empathy training into their practices. The incident became a touchstone for discussions about kindness, tolerance, and the importance of seeing beyond surface level judgments.